Welcome back to Swing State, where learning happens in motion. I'm your host, Mina. We bring you stories of resilience, transformation, and real leadership from across the world of work and life. Today's guest is someone whose story spans continents, industries, and leadership frontiers. I'm joined by Aiman Khan, Vice President of CANDU Energy at Atkins Realis and MIT Sloan MBA, and President of Women in Nuclear Canada. Born in Karachi, Pakistan, and now driving innovation in Canada's nuclear sector, Aiman leads some of the most complex engineering and infrastructure projects in clean energy today, while also championing for inclusion and equity for underrepresented voices in STEM. She's known for bridging deep technical expertise with visionary leadership, and her work is shaping the future of nuclear energy here in Canada and beyond. In this conversation, we'll explore her journey, how she leads under pressure, what it really takes to foster diversity in an industry like nuclear, and the legacy she's building through both her professional and personal purpose. Let's dive in. Aiman, welcome to Swing State. I'd love to start right at the beginning. What first sparked your interest in engineering and then the nuclear sector?
Thank you, Mina, for having me on this podcast. In terms of what sparked my interest, I would say I've always been a very inquisitive kid where I've taken apart vacuums in my house and really always wanted to know how toys worked. So I was known in my house to pull a toy and put it back together, as well as I loved riding my bicycle and became the neighborhood kid that would fix everyone's chain and, put air in their tire. And again, I think this was really stemming from my parents and especially my dad allowing me to kind of not really settle into the gender biases. So one was that they let me kind of run wild as this kid who was picking apart anything that she could get her hands on. From a South Asian side, usually your parents will say not to pull apart your vacuum in your house. But again, my dad, who comes from engineering, always believed in curiosity and looking at things and understanding how they work. The other would be when we were in Canada and my dad was working for General Motors in Oshawa at their engineering center. General Motors at that time used to hold a day called Take Our Daughters to Work. And that was a program to basically spark interest in STEM from grade 6 all the way to grade 9. So this is not just Take Your Kids to Work Day in grade 9. This was really geared towards all girls event where you came to the headquarters at General Motors in Oshawa, which is now the OPG building. And then from there, the day went on, you did a little bit of STEM exercises. There was always at the end of the day, there was a reveal of a new car. That got me really, really interested in designing cars. So that was where my passion was. Right when I entered high school, I didn't really know what designing cars would entail. I really liked math and I loved physics because it was very hands-on from a practical point, and you could actually, see it in motion what you were reading in the textbooks. So from biology and chemistry, that was the science that I gravitated towards the most. So those two became kind of my segue into engineering, though I didn't know what engineering was till I got to my first year.
I think parents back up a lot of our interest. Both my parents are architects, so I literally grew up jumping at job sites, on job sites, and from one to another. And then how did nuclear happen then?
The nuclear happened purely by accident. So when I entered engineering, I was actually first admitted to automotive engineering at Ontario Tech because I loved cars. That was my passion. That is what I wanted to do. And Then your 2009 downturn happened. A lot of the jobs were, especially in automotive, which was the hardest hit sector, were retrieving back either to areas where labor cost was lower or back to the States. This is where I had to make a pivot into mechanical engineering, which wasn't so geared towards one field because I had this knack for like building things. I still wanted to do something that was hands-on. So I picked mechatronics as the option for my mechanical major. And that's how I changed my lines. And I had taken a elective into nuclear faculty. That's when I discovered that there was a big refurbishment at company called Bruce Power happening around a similar time frame. Had my dad also interview for the same company and get in. He said to me, Emin, I think you should consider getting into nuclear because there's some exciting projects going on. There is quite a bit of hands-on work, and you would like that. So I did an internship at Bruce Power. At that time, there was a very neat initiative to make our outages short and concise. And with that, we were coming up with new robotic tooling. So I felt like all of a sudden I had found my calling that I was in this exciting, really cool sector that not a lot of people knew a lot about. And then I was doing something that I was passionate about, which was robotics. So yeah, so that's how I kind of fell into nuclear. There wasn't really, I would say a plan that I made, but I guess I could say there was a God's plan, and that's how I ended up there.
You've been trusted with leading projects in the industry that you are, which is very high stakes in terms of safety and regulation. I want to get a deeper sense of what it takes to lead in those environments.
I've always put my hand up for exciting journeys into different paths that I could carve out. So do something great that you really love, and everything else around it is kind of written in sand. Whenever I put my hand up for a project, one, I will see it through. I like to see anything that I put my name on come to a completion. And I don't give up. I'm a very stubborn person when it comes to that. So I think that's been the key. And you know what? When you're enjoying what you're doing, it doesn't feel like high stakes. It feels like going into work and working on an exciting new problem.
I kind of also stumbled upon oil and gas at the time. I graduated as civil engineer, and then between July and September of 2007, I had already changed industries because I was now going to become a frac engineer in Egypt and live out of those wagons that we kind of just lug around the desert, depending on Bedouins to tell me what my direction in terms of driving is going to be, because they follow the North Star and guide you in the desert. Like, I had not imagined any of that. And I landed in a place where, there were only men. I think I had to wait a good 6 weeks before I saw another lady on the field. Nobody spoke my language. In this environment, it's no longer about high stakes. It's about how much of an adrenaline rush does it really give you, and where does that passion come from? When you find yourself in situations where you feel like, you feel a little bit different, or your perspective feels different than the rest of the room, how do you navigate that conversation?
So I think one is the type of personality I am. It's very well known that Emin doesn't speak as much, but when she speaks or when she stands up for something, she is wholeheartedly standing up for the cause. So I think it also depends on your credibility. That's one I've seen, and people respect that, right? People respect what you bring to the table, especially in nuclear. Even though it is a very male dominated sector, I've never felt that I'm out of place. Definitely, I would say outnumbered, one of the only women or one of the only women and of color in the room, but never did I feel that my voice was not being heard. And again, I think it proves that if you perform your projects right and bring the passion to the table, you will have individuals listen to you. When a leader that you're trying to have them agree to something is not seeing you eye to eye, right? That's when I say maybe this is a day not to pick that conversation and come back the next day. But I think it goes on the back of building credibility and delivering projects, or really taking on those opportunities that bring not just the best out of you, but out of others as well. And with that, you build relationships across the industry that when you need those individuals to come through, they truly do.
We've only met in person, I don't know what, 2 or 3 times, and 2 times out of that was in a training situation. Like, it wasn't a one-to-one interaction for very long. But Aiman doesn't give up, and when Aiman speaks, she makes sense, and people listen. Is something that anybody who meets you can tell early on. And you're right, that takes credibility to lean on, but it also takes a lot of self-awareness to know what I stand for. You've invested in your MBA at MIT Sloan. You've invested in your career at and outside of Bruce Power, and then taken those key decisions about, where you wanted to land in life with guidance, but pretty much on your own. I want to understand a little bit more about what influenced you to go get that MBA, Aiman, and how do you think it has informed some of your leadership strategies today?
What took me towards my MBA? One was, it was in COVID. I saw that, most leaders are not ready to face that kind of uncertainty. You had some leaders that were making very, very good decisions and some weren't. The other was something, very personal in my life. Why am I as the South Asian female, not taking up space? The pivoting point to, I need to do something bigger. I need to go attain something bigger in my life. I was on a call with one of the EMBA staff at MIT, and he said, "Aiman, you need to apply. You have a very unique background. You will bring a lot to the table." And you're thinking, MIT, this is where world's most innovative leaders come from. How can I be that person that they're seeing in me? Again, I put the application through last minute and got in. MIT has had a profound impact on my life, on not just how I see my calling, but how I see others around me, right? So, their vision is to create principled leaders who innovate and change the world, and they talk about this often. And I think there was a turning point midway through my MBA program, where someone came to me who is a very senior leader in the telecommunication industry, and he's very well known around the world. And he said to me, you need to speak up more. When you speak up, people really listen, and we really enjoy your insight. And you need to take up space. We talk about allyship. Here's almost 3 men in my life, right? So my dad, this individual from school, as well as a really good colleague and work friend of mine, all of them have really pushed me to think beyond, to go get that job or to go get that opportunity, or for me to be curious and let me be curious. MIT gave me the toolbox to say, you know what, I'm also a leader, and I bring something to the table which is very unique. Being that first generation immigrant, being a person of color, being a female, coming from a cultural background that does not see women in leadership, to be that leader, to be that model that I didn't have. I thought, that became my calling, is to not just lead in my personal life from that point onwards, but also in the sector. A lot of people talk about glass ceiling. People of color and women, I think, and especially the double bind of women and color, I don't think our ceiling is a glass ceiling. It's a reinforced concrete ceiling is what we have, and we have to really chip at it. So this is basically my take on trying to chip at that ceiling.
It's amazing. I love what you shared, every bit of it. You place mentorship high up up in your priority. Personal purpose seems like, from what you're sharing with me, it is at the heart of your leadership style, of how you approach every single day at work. Would you help me understand, were there people who maybe said some things in time that also shaped your journey, or that also impacted, not the positive ones, but the ones who nudge in a way that you want to do something to make a point?
I think, coming to Canada, I came with my parents at the age of 10. So coming from a very comfortable life in Pakistan, and really my parents made a decision because of high corruption in the country. I think my parents started to see that, it's much harder for girls or for women to have their voice. So that those were two aspects that they moved, right? But then, you have packed up and left your friends and family, your nice house and your livelihood behind. And, we packed up in 12 boxes and ended up in Canada. And so began our life, right? Somebody who had never traveled in public transit was all of a sudden learning the subway. Coming to a different country and not seeing your own. This is back in 99. So really, you didn't have a great representation of South Asians. Even in Toronto, that was the first time in my life I was standing out as a person of color. I didn't actually know what that was till I came to Canada, that there is something called racism, and there's different words used for different ethnic backgrounds. So I was never privy to that. All of a sudden, the excitement of coming to Canada quickly turned into, maybe this is not a place for me, right? So I would say there was definitely bullying that went on in schools, because even though you spoke in English, because I went to a private school in Pakistan, but you had an accent, and you had a way of dressing, so just feeling out of place. And at that time I was so young, I couldn't really put a finger on it. I wanted to start speaking in the same accent as the kids here, and calling Toronto, Toronto, or not Toronto. So like you changed a lot, and you started to shy away from your Pakistani or South Asian roots. The next was, when I came to university, I was the very girly girl, carrying a purse type of person, very bubbly. And all of a sudden, I'm now wearing looser clothes, wearing hoodies, wearing runners, because I wanted to fit in. Many years later, I was at work, and someone had said something, I would say, racist. And at that time, I didn't know how to respond to it, because I was just 1 or 2 years into work. And he said, I can't believe that you're a Muslim and you're working. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, oh, your kind don't let women get educated, let alone work. And I think that day I felt like I was hit with a pile of bricks. I didn't know how to respond, and there was multiple people that had witnessed that go on the floor, yet said nothing, other than this one individual that pulled this individual aside and said, you know what, this was a very racist comment, and make sure that you never say this again. I didn't file a complaint because I was too scared. I felt, again, an outsider, that I don't belong in Canada, or I don't, my kind doesn't belong here. So I think, at that time I thought there needs to be something done. Well, I said, you know what, I want to get involved in when Canada at least get the representation in the sector up, right? Let's move a needle on that. And with that journey, my MBA, and going through many, many things on a personal and professional level, now I have the courage to say, let's take up space, right? My parents, especially when they came to Canada, they were on a weaker ground because they had left things back home. They didn't have the same social circles as here. They didn't have, multi generations living in the same country. So you just didn't have the support system from a social, financial, all aspects, right? So they were really starting from scratch. So they were kind of, they had to accept whatever was coming towards them and be very grateful for be it jobs, be it opportunities. And I think it got instilled in the kids of especially first generation immigrants that don't take up space, be very communal. Don't say something when somebody's being racist or condescending. We are very resilient people because we, either our parents or ourselves, have taken the decision to leave something behind and start from new. I think it takes amazing courage to do that, and then not be given a seat at the table um, to give back, right? I think the West is missing out from this kind of leadership, not to play down on the Caucasian leadership, but let's look at it, in its general population percentage, right? We take up majority of the world's population, but when you look towards leaders in Fortune 500 companies, even in Canada, they're not that many. Most of them you can count on your fingers. So I think those nuggets that have kind of stayed with me of, not feeling like you belong, I think the message we need to tell the world is we're here to make things better, not to take an opportunity away, but to give you different insight that other leaders might not be able to bring to the table.
I totally agree with you. You're doing a tremendous job bringing forth what you think, mentoring younger professionals. You probably speak to a lot of young professionals through Win Canada. What advice would you give to a professional entering your field today?
I think for young professionals, and I say this often, is be curious and put your hand up, right? There's been many times when I've said, "Oh, should I go after this opportunity, or am I not enough?" And I always like to tell young professionals, and especially women, that you are enough. You're more than enough. So take up space, be courageous, put your hand up. And again, I've come to realize that more and more people want to help you. You actually just have to ask. And that takes courage within you to type the first message or connect in a conference or at an event. But make that first initiation. Usually, whoever I've come across, whenever I've put up my hand or asked for an advice, I've gotten one. Whenever I have asked for an opportunity, I've gotten one. So again, that's what I'll say, kind of what my journey has been, being extremely curious, willing to take challenges. There's always going to be an uncomfortable point in a new opportunity, new challenge. And with time, you will come out of it. Just stick it through.
Aiman, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed learning about your journey, both as a professional trying to find the space that they want to grow and spread their wings in, and also as the leader that you've become. I do believe that you're on to some great things, both in the industry that you are in and the way that you're bringing diversity to the conversation, the way that you're mentoring the next generation. All of this, I think, truly embodies what Swing State is about. And so thanks again for your time. I hope we can continue the conversation. To our listeners, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe, share the episode, leave us a review or a comment. It really helps us to bring more real stories of resilience, thoughtful leadership, courage, and taking up space to our community here. Until next time, I'm Mina, and this is Swing State, where learning happens in motion.